I'm sorry, Christian. Liturgy's messy, you know. I sat there, put the incense in, and then he stood behind me waiting for me to incense the gospel, and I just spaced it. But isn't that human? Huh? Isn't that human? And the truth of the matter is that all of us do that stuff, but we want to put the mask on. We want everybody to think that I'm doing okay, see? When the truth of the matter is, you know what's underneath this smile? I'm standing in front of a church full of people, and I know, oh boy, what am I going to say to them? How am I going to get their attention? What am I going to do that's going to be able to help them to focus more on Jesus, who died for them and loves them? Yeah. Can I change places with you? Yeah, really, I'm not kidding you. See, it's so much easier when you're sitting here than you're up here. But I got an Easter story that I want to share with you. And I think that, you know, sometimes living in the world that we're living in this age of Twitter and texting and emails and iPads and smartphones, there is so much information that comes at us so quickly that we really don't have time to process things anymore. You know, I look at the kids that are growing up, and I think to myself, you know, they got so much information that's coming at them. Do they understand what's coming at them? You know, when I grew up, I mean, we didn't have all this stuff, and so things were at a much slower pace. And I don't think I get too many adults who would argue with me that people's plates are pretty darn full today, and life is so fast and life is so busy, it takes all you got in the planning just to sit down as a family to try to have a meal together. And so relationships get shoved to the side oftentimes. We don't intend to do that, but things happen. We make promises, and the promises get broken, but when you're on the end of a broken promise, you see, you get hurt. And you become disappointed, and you begin to lose trust. And when you begin to lose trust, you begin to lose hope. And when you lose your hope, what else is there's nothing left to lose. I want to share an email with you that I received from someone I've been seeing for spiritual direction for some time. And this person has been struggling. And you'll see what he was struggling with in the email. Dear Father Paul, sorry I'm so tardy in getting this out to you. I wanted to let you know that my dad died on Monday morning of this week. He began to actively engage in the dying process on Passion Sunday and finally passed over on Monday around 10 a.m. I and a lot of my family were with him. I forgave him, Father, and he forgave me. Thank you for the truth which has taught me how necessary it is to forgive and to love. That, my brothers and sisters, is what Easter is all about. That is what Easter is all about. You know, this is an exciting time, but it's a confusing time because there are people who want to begin to redefine everything today. And I could go down the list. But when you begin to do that, you open the door to other stuff that sometimes we don't think about because we don't have the time to think about it, to process it. What are the consequences of opening this door? And so we're talking about a person here who was angry with his father. And he carried resentments. And every time he would come to see me, he'd say to me, I have no peace. I have no peace. I have no peace. So one day, I asked him, do you want to know why you have no peace? He said, yes. I said, are you sure? Yes, Father. I said, okay. He said, John, you need to forgive your father. I said, you have no peace because you're angry and you're carrying resentments and you're carrying stuff that God never intended for us to carry. You need to forgive your father. And he struggled with that. As we all struggle with forgiving people who we feel are not deserving of our forgiveness. You know, we had a beautiful, beautiful Holy Week, and we had celebrations Thursday night and Friday night and last night, and 5 people were baptized. And you know, each of the readings in the Gospels on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday sought to illumine the promise of Easter. And the Gospel for Thursday night was about Jesus having the last meal that he was going to have with his apostles. And after supper, he gets up and he takes his outer garment off and he ties a towel around his waist and he starts to wash their feet. Pope Benedict XVI said that that action of washing the feet of his disciples was the most important lesson that Jesus taught his disciples in his 3 years of ministry. He says that in essence, it fulfills the entire gospel. And so he comes to Peter, and Peter says, you're not going to wash my feet. Because that was an action that slaves performed. And Jesus said, if I don't wash your feet, you can have no part of me. And Peter said, then wash all of me. And Jesus said, I've already washed you. But what I'm doing for you now, you should do for one another. And the author of the gospel does something very interesting with the word, his garment. It's a Greek word. And he uses the Greek word of taking his garment off in the same way that Jesus, as he lays his garment aside, that Jesus would lay his life aside. And so the word garment and the word life are synonymous with one another. What Jesus was showing his disciples the night before he died was that the action of laying aside his garment was the action of laying aside his life, himself, for somebody else. That's the gospel. And then the Pope said this on Friday. You know, this new Pope that everybody's taken by. After the way of the cross, he offered just this very simple reflection. He said that the cross reveals a judgment. Whoa. But he said that the judgment is, if you look at it, he says, the judgment is that God loves us. That God loves us. And in judging us, in loving us, he says that if I embrace this love, I'm saved. If I refuse it, I'm condemned. Not by him, but by my own self, because God never condemns. He only loves and saves. But here's the kicker. By accepting the love that Christ offers me from the cross, I must be willing to lay aside my life as he did for the sake of somebody else. This is exactly what John did when he forgave his father. He laid aside all of his resentment. He laid aside all of his anger. He laid aside all of his disappointment. And he forgave his father. And in forgiving his father forgave him. That's what Easter is about. It's about forgiving people who don't deserve it. We don't deserve to be forgiven. We need to be forgiven. We need to be forgiven. Forgiveness takes only one person. Reconciliation takes two people. Christ forgave us from the cross, but that doesn't necessarily mean that all of us are reconciled. You see, in order to be reconciled, we must be willing to accept the forgiveness and then be willing to make amends. And in the willingness to make amends, then we reconcile. I love it when the children bring their Easter stuff so I can bless it. And it's good that we do that. But you know and I know that isn't the meaning of Easter. Easter's not about a bunny. It's not about an egg hunt. It's not about an egg roll. It's not about going out and buying a new dress to come to church. See? It's about being willing to accept what God is offering us from the cross. His judgment upon us, that he forgives us and loves us, and to accept that embrace of love. And in turn, being willing to lay my stuff aside for the sake of somebody else, even when they don't deserve it. I would bet my life that there are people in this church this morning who are carrying anger, bitterness, resentment, disappointment, hurt. And you've been carrying it for a long time. The only way that we can be saved is if we are willing to let that stuff go. To let it go. To take it off like a garment and lay it aside as Jesus laid it aside, and to begin to wash the feet of someone that you think and feel doesn't deserve it. Then you will have peace. Then you will have peace. And having peace, you will have hope. And having hope, you will know love. And no one will be able to take that away from you. My brothers and sisters, this is the day that the Lord has made. He is risen. Take it off. Lay it aside. Forgive and be reconciled. And celebrate Easter.